All right. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Chris Cathers. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Arts Council, and we're thrilled to bring you another episode of our Creative Industry Summit series. We're joined today by Heath Eric, and Tamara will be introducing him in just a moment. But I wanted to thank everyone on behalf of the Kentucky Arts Council, staff, and board for joining us for this session. And each time we do one of these, we like to do a land acknowledgement before we begin. And the land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Today, we stand on ground occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts that are left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who were here and those who are here now and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land they left for us into the seventh generation. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Tamara.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Tamara Coffey. I'm the Arts Program Branch Manager. And I'm saying that, and I feel really strange because I know everyone who's on here. Richard, Marcus, welcome. We're so glad you're here today. If at some point you want to turn your camera on and your audio, Heath is happy to speak directly to you. If you have questions for him, just go ahead and jump in. Otherwise, he's got a slideshow he's going to go through for us.
Hi,
Mark
Tamara.
and
Hi, Heath.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Good to hear you. Good to see you. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Marcus. That's Marcus talking. Okay. So, let me just give you a little bit of background on the Creative Industry Summit series. It's provides professional arts business training and arts information to artists across disciplines, arts organizations, and arts supporters in general. We kicked off this round of webinars in October, which was National Arts and Humanities Month, by offering webinars on strategies for Kentucky investment in the arts with Kentuckians for the Arts Board Chair Lori Meadows, and Arts Education Milestones with Kentucky Department of Education Academic Program Consultant Jessica Green. In November, we presented a look at two community scholars introduced in Kentucky Folklife magazine with editor-in-chief and folklorist Delaney Bowers. And today is our last webinar of 2025, but we'll start back up in January. So make sure you check the KAC website at artscouncil.ky.gov. If you don't, go ahead and sign up if you don't receive it, please go ahead and sign up for Artsy News, and you'll see information there sometimes too. If you go to our website and then click on our YouTube link, you'll be able to find all of our webinars as they've been recorded over time. You can go back and pick and choose the ones you want to see, or you can watch the whole playlist. We're happy to have you join us. If there's a topic in particular that you would like for us to cover, please email us at kyarts@ky.gov. And Marcus Schuling and Richard, you all have my email address. You're welcome just to email me directly. That's fine. But let us know what you're looking for. So today, we're going to be talking about good acoustics, sound fundamentals so you get great sound. Or so you sound great, sorry. So Heath Eric is president and co-founder of the Eric Group, a professional concert and event management firm. Services include total event management, talent buying, marketing, staging, sound, lights, logistics, planning, and consulting. The Eric Group is all about concerts and works with organizations, venues, municipalities, and government entities to produce high-quality concerts, events, and festivals. They specialize in serving small communities by building and managing live concert events in order to drive tourism and promote economic growth. And for those of you who've been in the directory for a while, you may recognize Heath because he also was in the directory for a while. So I'm going to turn it over to Heath, and we'll have some announcements at the end, so hang on. Okay, Heath, take it
Thank
away.
you, Tamara. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cynthia. It's been a minute. When Tamara calls and asks, usually if her and Chris are in, I'm in. So I'm glad to be here. I see some familiar faces and names, and my hope is to make the next hour or so enjoyable and really give all you folks some meat on the bone that can help you with regards to your own sound. A little insight about my background that may help with that is yes, we have the company, the Eric Group, and we have a full sound light staging division. We do shows from a few hundred people to 10,000 people at bigger festivals. Our business has really grown, but it started at its core back when Molly and I were in the directory and we were touring as professional artists, and we made our living that way. We toured all over the states and did a couple of trips overseas to the Czech Republic. And 99% of the time we were doing our own sound. So we truly understand the struggles and the importance of being a professional touring musician and not having that tech crew with you that can make you sound good. We understand having from small gigs to big, super important gigs and sound being bad for reasons beyond your control. So not only do we have the insight into good professional sound, but we really have a firm understanding of the importance of that from an artist perspective and a lot of tips and tricks we learned having to do that ourselves from stage in order to make a living. So I'm happy to share as much as time will allow and go as deep as you guys would like. I have about a 20 slide deck that we'll go through pretty quickly, and I planned some basic fundamental bullet points on sound and some do's and don'ts. But before we get started, if you would, and if you don't want to, it's fine. I'd like to just kind of get an idea of who's here. If you each of you could just share, and I don't know if Tamara does the order, or you guys just chime in. It matters not to me. But I'd like to just know who you are, and I see a lot of familiar faces, folks I know we've worked with before, and maybe just a brief 30 seconds or less on, I'm in a full band, we run our own sound, we need help. I'm a solo artist, just so I can get an idea of the focus of where I need to be before I dive into the sound, and I can really hit the mark to give the group some beneficial points. If we could just run around the horn real quick, just few seconds, that would be great for me and much appreciated.
Thanks, Heath. And I'm just going to go down the list as they appear on my screen. So that puts Richard first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Richard Goring. I'm a guitarist. I work a lot solo. I do work with other instrumentalists as well, oftentimes with a bass and say a treble instrument like violin or flute. Repertoire covers everything from classical. I'm classically trained, but gig wise, to make a living, you got to play a lot of different stuff. So I play everything from Beatles to standards to bossa to swing. As I said, with various combinations of instruments.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.
How about we go on to Marcus, who also has a beard now?
Hi, my name is Marcus Wilkerson. I go by the stage name M. Lightsmith now. Singer-songwriter, but also classically trained vocalist. I'm doing a lot of bel canto, operatic style music right now. Actually, matter of fact, tomorrow I leave for Wichita, Kansas for the Music on Site program at Friends University, taking part in a couple of opera scenes and some compromise roles, a few small operettas. Yeah, I play often by myself, but I also collaborate with other instrumentalists, such as the guitar and upright bass, kind of a really small combo group, and sometimes with drummers. But I do find that this common thread throughout my whole singer-songwriter career that, man, I need to pick up more tools on sound, and golly, I need to be able to know exactly what I need when I need it, to be able to judge when is the appropriate or what tool is appropriate for what situation. Would be really, really awesome.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks.
Shuling, hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here today. I'm very interested about those sound, how it works for the stage performance. I'm not a musician, I'm a dancer. Sometimes, because I was involved for this kind of stage set up things. I would like to learn. That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Heath.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shuling. Mark, David, do you want to say anything? You're both musicians. You might as well talk.
Dave Blood. You can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Kentucky Arts Council guitar player. Um, haven't played out in a while, but I'm always interested in sound um, and other ways to improve it, and seeing how many things can translate over to studio as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. And as Cynthia said in the chat, she and I will be monitoring the chat if you want to type in questions. But Heath is also open to you just blurting out your questions. He likes to look at your face when he's telling you the secrets of getting really great sound.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tamara. And hey, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces. Thanks for that. That helps me a lot. Yes, ask me questions because diving into good sound principles, I've been doing this most of my life. I've been working on the sound side of things since 92 professionally. So we could talk about it for minutes or we could talk about it for years. So I'll try to hammer home with some fundamentals that help me, but please stop asking me questions and let me know. I'm just going to dive in here to a deck we put together, and then I also have uh, an outline with much more detail that I'm happy to send to Tamara, and she can send to you guys with a lot of tips I put together. The deck just really hits the top part. So uh, one of the key things that was important for me to understand, and I tell artists is, live sound starts well before the PA. And you guys know this is fundamental. When you can hear good, when you can sound good, you're going to perform better. And you guys know this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. When you have good sound, you're going to have better shows. Some of my favorite shows I remember as a musician, while they're great with some of those big shows, but some of my favorite shows were those shows where the sound was on point, where I could truly get lost and forget about all this stuff and just focus on my art. And that's really what I think is key for artists with live sound. The crowds are happier, it's easier to mix. So there's some fundamentals you can do that can take a lot of that stress right off the table because we've all been there. We've all had the nightmare scenarios when things don't work, feedback and all that. But my hope is to really just break this down to a fundamental level. Uh, I've identified 8 areas I want to talk about today. First and foremost is the room, meaning your space you're in. You can't overcompensate or undercompensate either way for a room. A room's going to have natural qualities, and a room can be a bar, it can be an outdoor amphitheater, it can be an outdoor stage, it can be a performance hall that's perfectly tuned for uh, incredible acoustics. But you have to consider your room before you consider any of these. Then there's some basics on the PA. There's gain structure, and if you don't know what gain is, that's fine, but that's an important thing to talk about. There's EQ, which you have to understand some basics on EQ. And then I thought I would talk about monitors, uh, which you use on stage to hear, stage volume, mic technique, and putting it all together. And I'm happy to dive into any of those areas or take questions into areas beyond that if you guys just ask me. I'm happy to answer anything I can. So one thing important in a room, and I actually learned this when I was touring. I say I learned this. I was reminded of this when Molly and I used to do shows at Kentucky State Parks. We did this tour, and I lost a lot of weight because for a 40-year-old man to camp in the July and August heat of Kentucky summer, it was a great workout. But we performed under these picnic shelters, and if you've ever been under those, it's like I would come from a night before playing a club or something, and my rig sounded great. But then under those picnic shelters, I always noticed that room, that howl. And it wasn't anything wrong with the PA, it's the room. So you have to really understand your room because the acoustics of a room are going to really dictate what you can and can't do. In its most simplest form, if you've ever played on a stage facing a wall or facing a building, you hear that slapback. I mean, you can't really do much about that except turn it up. Those are reflections. If you've ever played in a club or a performing arts center that has drapes or has treatments or panels on the wall, you probably don't hear that because those things absorb that sound. Sound, it's a physical wave going through the air. So it's going to go until it can't go anymore. if you've ever done a sound check in a room like a gymnasium that's loud and has a lot of reflections, but then you play the show when that is full of bodies, you can hear a big difference because the bodies absorb the sound. So the only note I wanted to make on that is that however you work your PA or work these principles I'm going to share with you, it's important at the onset to understand the room you're in. If you're playing in a cave, you're going to need less reverb than you might if you're playing in a soundstage studio with no reflections at all. Does that make sense? Just to understand your basic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a thorough analysis of it. Just understand where you're playing. If you're playing facing a wall, you're going to have some slapback. If you're playing in a corner, you're going to have some coupled low end, because that can help explain some of the problems you may have sometimes. One other example I'll give you, some cities have these showmobiles, and they're great for stages, but when they open up, the back is a hard surface. And if you're playing in front of a hard surface, and say you're in a bluegrass band, and you've got a vocal mic or an instrument mic here, well, your monitors are slamming into that hard surface. So what happens if you step away from that monitor to do a solo? Well, your monitor is still slamming into that surface, but instead of that sound hitting the back of your body, it's now going straight back into your microphones. So that can cause feedback. Does that make sense? How that would bounce off the wall back to the microphone? So you can't fight physics. You just have to be aware of them and act accordingly. So that's the room. That's important. PA system. I'm assuming everybody understands PA system. You have a microphone or a DI for your guitar. You go into a mixer. It can be a digital mixer or an analog. Processing refers to EQ, compressors, effects, reverb, and then it goes out to your speakers. Um, Typically, front of house speakers are your speakers that the audience hears, right? A lot of systems will have subs. So when you look at your frequency range up top, you'll be your high ends, then your mid range, and then your subs are typically on the bottom for ground stack systems. Monitors are stage monitors where the performers hear. The mix in the monitors is often totally different than the mix in the main speakers, unless you're doing it yourself. And a lot of times you mix from your monitors. And then you have your mixer and your microphone. So I'm just going to keep moving through that. Everybody, we're all good on that. Some basics, and I know this is kind of fundamental after hearing from some of you folks, but you want your speakers in front of your microphone. There's one exception that works well, and it's a trick Molly and I learned. Have you guys ever used any of those Bose line array towers? Those are exceptional. You can put them behind you. They don't feed back, and you can actually mix. If you have one of those, they reject feedback great. If not, you want to make, you've been to concerts and your speakers are in front of your microphones, and we've all been at conferences or places where folks come out in front of the speaker. A lot of politicians do that, and I'm endlessly amazed at these folks who are seemingly well accomplished in their careers, but they hold the microphone down here and they can't hear, and then they walk right in front of the speaker, or better yet, point the microphone right at the speaker. That's going to cause feedback. Monitors are your stage monitors. So a few things I want to talk about here, because we're kind of getting into some of the meat of it now, because oftentimes as artists, we're mixing from stage our own sound. A lot of times we're mixing reference from our monitors. One key thing we always want to do, and listen, I was a rocker. I had big amps and everything too, but the lower we can keep our stage volume, it's better when we can use our ears. It always is. We always want to make sure our microphones are not aimed at the monitors. And 99.99% of the time in a professional live sound setting, when you hear feedback in the mains, it is starting in the monitors, especially when you're talking acoustic bands like you guys were mentioning. When you get into acoustic guitars, they're one of the toughest instruments to properly EQ and gain. Acoustic basses, fiddles, flutes, even drums sometimes if you don't do them properly. But it's so important to have those mics placed properly, and I can talk about that in depth too. It's so important to have in the monitors only what you need in the monitors, because that feedback loop is going to start in your monitors. And then once that feedback loop comes out of your monitors, your mics are then picking it up, sending it to your mains. And that all happens almost instantaneously. But 99% of the time when you have feedback or issues, It's starting in the monitors. So that's really important for folks to understand. And as professionals, we all understand, our monitor mix is not necessarily going to sound like a full range, detailed mix that the audience is listening to. Sometimes we only want certain things in there. Where it gets tricky is if we are mixing our mix from our monitors, then we have to be aware of those elements to compensate for them. Does that make sense on the monitor side? And anytime you guys want to ask me anything on any of this stuff, or we can circle back, I'll be glad to. One thing I wanted to mention, and this may or may not be applicable, when you get into professional sound settings on your subs, on your low end, you don't need anything in that low end except your kick and bass, and maybe if you have some kind of sub synth. All it is noise, it's air, and it's mud. High pass filter is my first principle, is your best friend. What's a high pass filter? Somebody may say. If you look across the spectrum of audio and you start it at 20K hertz, that's what you can't hear. When you get down to your 10 and K, you're ringing, your high endy sounds, and you come all the way down to 20 hertz. And we can't really hear much of 20 hertz either. A lot of your kick drum is at 65-ish. Your bass is a little lower. That's what your sub is producing, like what you hear in your EDM dance, that really low end, that kick and bass punch. Everything else, roll it off. Roll it off. That's a high pass filter. What I start with is, unless it's a kick or a bass, the first thing I'm doing with every channel on my board is I'm starting at about 100 hertz. And anything, what I mean by high pass filter is anything below that 100 hertz is turned off. So that noise can't even get into the system. That noise, that energy creates potential for feedback. And it can be something as simple as on a vocal mic. If you have a female vocalist, I may do that high pass at 200 hertz because I don't even want that microphone stand to pick up that room when a person is stepping on the stage or hitting the microphone. I'm cutting that out right from the get-go. So you don't need any of that in your mix. And in acoustic guitar, start at 120, 160, unless you're playing a baritone, and still go at 100. You don't even want that noise in there. So any questions on high pass filter or anything on that?
Heath, I might have missed something. That high pass filter, is that a setting on the monitor? I think I might be a little unclear.
Hey, I'm glad you asked. So a high pass filter, that can either be done on EQ or on your mixer board. And a lot of times you'll see a button that looks like this. I'm going to draw you a thing. If you have a little mixer, you'll see a button that looks like this. Okay? That'll have like an 80 or 100 by it. That's like a high pass filter button. On some mixers, you just push that and it automatically, what that's doing is at that frequency, that's cutting all that low end from coming into your mix. Now, on your monitors, Marcus, depending on the monitors you have, most monitors, modern monitors today that are powered monitors, they have a setting where you can hit that on the back, or you can turn them to monitor mode, which is a built-in high pass filter. Because even on your monitors coming at you, that low end and it's more that energy than anything that can really lead whole low end cycle starts coming. Also, you can do this on your EQs. It's as simple as turning the low end down. And you can test with it. Like if you're singing, and let's say you have your EQ set straight, your high, mids, and your lows. Just start saying, hey, and start sweeping that low end down. And you'll see when it makes a difference. But you'll be quite amazed that you won't really hear much cutting that out. But what you're doing is you're taking noise and energy and air out of your system. And if you get multiple channels stacked with that extra noise and energy into it, you can understand how that could cause some problems. So it's either a button that looks like that, or you can do it on your EQ and you're basically turning that low end down on everything except kick and bass and subs. And that will right off the bat give you a lot of good things working for you, because the key thing with sound is only putting into that system what you need, not adding additional energy or noise that you don't need, because those things amplify exponentially as you add those things in there that you don't need. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. I like how you just explained the only like less is more essentially.
Absolutely. It always is. And that's a big thing that can really help you out of the get-go, because by the time you get to having your feedback or your problems, it may seem like it's, oh my gosh, that guitar. Oh my gosh, my vocal mic's feeding back. But most of the time, it's a combination of a lot of those things that are introducing things into your signal path that you don't need. But that high pass filter is critical. And I'll talk more about EQ as we get into it. Um, Want to talk about gain structure. Are you guys, you can just raise your hand. Do you guys know what gain is, or do I need to talk about that a little?
Talk about it, please.
Okay. Okay. So gain and faders. You know what? You have your preamp. So at the top of a board, you know how you have that little button that says gain that you turn like this? And then down in your board, you have that fader.
Mhm.
Okay, so gain and volume. Fader is your volume. Gain is your preamp pot up here. Your gain adds pressure to a signal that's being introduced into the mixer. Your fader turns that signal up and down. The best way I've found to understand this is I liken it to water pressure. So imagine you're at your faucet. And if you have low water pressure, you can turn that faucet all the way up, but it'll be wide open. That faucet is wide open. It's turned up to max volume, but that pressure is still only going to max out at whatever your water pressure is. Now, if you have really high water pressure, you might turn your handle, which your handle is your fader, it's your volume, your water
Hmm.
pressure is your gain. You might turn your handle and that water's coming out strong. And then you open that handle up all the way, that water is slamming out. So your gain is your pressure. Your fader and volume is your lever that turns it on. Why is this important? This is a critical thing. It's always best to have your gain set to unity. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. If you were playing a keyboard going straight into a system, or if you were playing a loud guitar amp going into a mic, or if you were playing a kick or snare drum going into a mic, those are loud instruments, right? I mean, they're loud. You're not going to need a lot of gain on them. Okay? If you're playing a concert style nylon string acoustic guitar, you're going to need more gain. You're going to need more pressure, because that instrument is not nearly as loud as, say, your buddy next to you who's chunking on a banjo or a mandolin. If you're a vocalist, it's all across the board. You know, some vocalists sing really, really soft. Some vocalists come out and scream their lungs out. So the gain is made to compensate for whatever pressure is needed so that that volume can get up to unity. So the gain is going to be different on every channel, and that's perfectly fine. The best way to do your gain setting is the meters on your channel. Are you guys familiar with that? You know where they go green, yellow to red and they'll clip? If I'm a vocalist and I'm checking, and I don't even have my mic turned up yet, my fader is down, right? I'm checking my gain, my preamp. I'm going, hey, hey, check. And I'm getting that gain set to where I'm just below clipping. And then I might even notch it down just a little so I have some headroom. That gain's going to be different if I go, hey, than if I go, hey, and I'm soft, hey. So depending on the instrument, you want to get that gain set where your meters are not clipping, but you're getting enough water pressure. And then you can bring your fader up. Ideally, unity, and I should have put a slide on this. Unity on your faders is where you see that zero. You know how to be like -10, -20, -30. Unity is like zero. If you can get your fader up to zero with your gain good, what you're doing is you're letting your signal flow straight with no compression or distortion. And I know I'm getting down a rabbit hole, but the key is it's important to get that gain set clean before you just plug in and turn your system up, and you don't want to turn your gain up for volume. You want to use your fader. Um, does that make sense? And you guys ask me some questions specifics. I'll be glad to explain it more if I'm not making any sense.
It's all making sense, man. I mean, you've touched on just about everything that, I mean, it all makes sense to me. And I
Okay.
like how you described the nylon needing more gain versus the steel string or a banjo string,
Yeah,
needing less. Yeah, it obviously projects more.
it
Uh,
does.
yeah.
So I've got a more self-contained kind of system without, well, different kinds of EQ and everything. And I'd love to talk about that when you have a second. Not, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I use this. I use a very simple um, PA, and to get effect, it doesn't have any effects on it. So I have a Sans amp acoustic fly rig, which has got a lot of uh, got things you can EQ. Anyhow, I'd like to talk about that sometime, but go ahead forward and
Well, I'm like about halfway through this. If you want, we can dive into that when I get through this, and happy to
that'd
talk
be
about
great. I've got questions
it.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah, just make notes. I'm
I
happy.
am.
I
Yeah.
love it. The key thing, and I do again, I have an outline. I'll send to Tamara, and she can send you all with some more notes. But it's all back to having clean signal in your system. Again, that feedback, those problems you're going to have or bad sound are going to really be exponentially worse as you introduce frequencies you don't need in there. If you don't have enough gain and you're turning your fader up, you're going to have a lot of energy that has no sound tied to it. If you have too much gain and you turn your feeder up, you could blow the pipes or create more feedback. So it's really important just to get your gain set for each individual instrument. It's going to give you cleaner tone, less feedback, and it's just going to be better sound. Sound is really, it can be difficult and complex, but it's really in a world of how can I explain this? Because I had a studio during the whole big Pro Tools thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, you can do anything. But sound is really about not doing anything, but taking out what's not needed in there. You know what I mean? Because if you don't have a clean source and a clean signal flow, you're not going to fix that with a bunch of bells and whistles. You're just going to be chasing your tail the whole time. Uh, so let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about EQ fundamentals. Um, that's really a key after you get to gain. Uh, we talked about the high pass filter. That is your best friend, number one, right off the gate, especially in live sound settings. And one thing I'll say about the high pass filter is also circle back to the first thing I said, your room. So I mentioned that picnic shelter that all the parks had that we played at them that had that real woofy ooh in there. Well, Richard, I played a variety of open tune guitars, baritones, standard tune guitars, and I could cut that seriously up to about 500 hertz in
Mm.
that room because that room had so much of that natural resonance in it.
Right.
So if you're in that room, don't be afraid to bring that high pass filter up. You don't have to deal with that woofiness. So it's just about understanding your room and your space and where you're in. Because I thought something was wrong with my speakers at first. Then I had a setting for state parks picnic shelters. Um, what I call mud in anything you do, and we talk about it all the time in live sound. I don't care if you're on a stage in a festival. I don't care if you're at a bar. I don't care if you're at the greatest performing arts center on the planet. Around 200 hertz is going to give you problem. It's like a B string. I mean, you really got to tweak on it to keep it perfect. So you can dip a little in 200 and it's not going to hurt you and you're probably going to dip more. That is always going to cause you problems. It's just the nature of the science of the beast. 160, 200 to 400, I dip just about every show in there and it's going to clean things up for you and solve a lot of problems. And what I encourage people to do is when you're setting up your system or practicing, go through those EQ settings and sweep through them because you can hear them. You'll notice them, you know. Ooh. and you can dip different things out and hear them, and you'll notice that cleaning up. But high pass filter, everything possible. Cut the mud. You're always going to have some problems around 200. If you need to add clarity, if you need to, and I mean a little, 3 to 6, up in 12 adds air. It's hard. Most people can't hear up around 12, 15. I know I can't. That adds air. But if you need some clarity, some bite, some attack on a tom, some pick on a guitar just to cut it through, some emphasis on a vocal. You got to watch vocals because you'll get that sibilance, you'll get that in there. But clarity around 3 to 6K a little. But the key thing with EQ, 100%, it's in the Bible from the gods of rock and country and classical and everything. Always, always, always cut before boosting. Again, the more you add into your signal chain, the more it can exponentially cause you problems down the road. Now, there are times when you need to boost. It happens every day, but always try to cut first. If you can solve a problem by reductive EQing, that is much better than adding. And, when I was in school in the 80s, we did this whole, every EQ we saw, we thought it wasn't right on our mom's stereo or our car, our friends, unless we did that. I still don't know why we did that, except we could hear, hip hop and rap was coming out in the Run DMC CD, sounded awesome. We do that. I don't know if I'm the only one. We dipped out all that metal. It was just like in our brains on our boom boxes. Don't do it that much, but always cut. If you have a problem, try to cut down what you have. If you can't hear your vocal good because it's a little muddy, cut some mud. Look at your gain structure. Rather than boosting up all that high-end EQ, you can probably solve that problem better by adding a little more gain, getting a little stronger signal, and cutting that mud out. And then you're like, whoa, I'm back on top of it. So always try to cut before boosting on EQ. That's a rule we live by. Uh, Here's a vocal EQ cheat sheet I made. I assume we'd have some vocalists. I'm a vocalist myself. I know, Richard, you're an instrumentalist, but oftentimes we work with bands, and with bands, the vocals have to win. I mean, you can have the greatest band ever, but if they can't hear the lead singer singing "Don't Stop Believing," I mean, it's that the vocals, and there's a fine line, but the vocals have to be clear and present, able to hear. So just vocal cheat sheet, we always start with that high pass filter at 100 to 120 hertz. With female vocalists, we move that up to about 200 a lot of times. We cut some of those mids around 250 to 350. And then, if needed, for clarity and presence, you can, and I mean a little, I mean like 1 dB. I'm not talking boost that thing up a little. I'm talking just a little bit. 4 to 5K. And then if you need some air on it, air just kind of lets it breathe a little bit. 10 to 12K. That's just kind of basic where we live. And you notice that 250 to 350, that's still down in that 200 to 400 range. That's always going to give you problems no matter what instrument you play. Guitars are some of the worst for that. And I'll send this to you guys too. An instrument EQ cheat sheet. So if you're playing acoustic guitar, depending on the guitar, and some guitars, they really resonate. You get like one of those old pre-World War II Martins, or I really got into playing baritones a lot. But still, you want to roll those off at 80 to 120 hertz at minimum, and maybe more. You can tell on your guitar, because anything below that is just noise, and anything below that is the space your bass guitar, your kick drums, your toms are going to live in, and you're just adding competing noise and frequencies, and that's going to result in mud. If you guys can think the best concert you've ever been to, the highest end concert, some of my favorite bands that I really love for their professionalism and sonic quality were like Tower of Power, or a Big John Prine. I just saw Tyler Childers in Nashville. And it's like you're listening at these big live things to high fidelity headphones. It's because they are so surgical with what's going to through each channel. And they're doing that by cutting out a lot of the transients and the overtones that don't do anything other than add mud. And that's why that high pass filter is your friend. Electric guitar, the same way, high pass filter. On the bass guitar, I thought about taking this off. I usually put the bass guitar filter at about 40, and then it'll go down, because we can't hear 20 anyway. If you can, that's great. You feel 20, that's more air. but I try to keep that air out because that air, that energy can push those sound waves to cause more things. And I work to keep the instruments out of the vocal space as much as I can. And by that, each instrument has, if you look across a line of an EQ and you're going from low to high, you can see all the way up. Each instrument has its little spot where it fits, from your kick drum to your bass to maybe your toms to your keyboards to you're getting up to your guitars to your fiddles, your flutes, and right in that pocket in the middle where we're cutting a lot is where your vocals live, and then some air on your vocals. So the better you're able to fit those instruments into that sonic spectrum, the cleaner your mix is going to be. Um, Any questions on EQ? And I've only got a few more slides and I can take questions. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. So monitors, that's where it all starts. And we've all been there, and it's tough when you're running your own sound. In our world, we have a front of house engineer who only mixes for the audience. And then that signal is fully split, meaning Richard and Marcus and Shuling and Cynthia and Mark and Tamara and Chris and Dave. When you guys are in the band, I've got one of your lines going to the guy out front, and we're split, and another independent line is going to the monitor engineer. The guy at the front is mixing solely for the audience out in front. The monitor engineer is mixing for you all, for the band, and it's a totally separate mix. Uh, the key thing in monitors is you always want more. And if you're in a bluegrass band, it's the worst, man. I'm just telling you. I love doing bluegrass sound, but they always want more monitor. And Richard, as you probably know, you can only get so much acoustic guitar monitor in that thing. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So the first thing with monitors is they're only going to go so loud. I mean, that's it. They're only going to come up. You can ring them out, you can have them set up perfectly, but still, once they hit that point, that's all they're going to do. And they are affected even more by your environment because you have band members moving, thus affecting the acoustic flow. Just visualize all these sound waves going through the air. So every time, Marcus, you're on stage and move a little bit, you're affecting that room, that dynamic. You have open mics on stage near those monitors. What could possibly go wrong, right? You have humidity, which changes everything. You have weather, which changes everything. I know we've all probably done a sound check in the middle of the day, and then you come back at night when the temperature's dropped and the barometric pressure dropped, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? Sounds a little different because it's a physical acoustic wave. So the first thing with monitors is if they're ringing, turn them down. Turn them down. A lot of times people get in the habit of needing more, and Richard needs more Richard, but then Marcus is hearing too much Richard, so Marcus wants more vocal. Well, then Richard's hearing too much of Marcus, so he's like, turn my guitar up, and then Marcus is like, I'm done with all y'all. I want to hear some drums, and we're constantly bringing all that up, and then it's just noise. So turn them down, cut them at that 250 to 350. That's always that 200 to 400 is always going to be a good range. And what I mean by sweep is if you have a parametric EQ and you can turn it down a little, you can sweep it and you can hear where that spot is between 2 and 4K. If you're having any wonky ringing, that you'll hear it go out. And I'm happy to talk about a parametric EQ, but one of the best ways to work on monitors is to have them set up, get them feeding back, and then run that EQ until that feedback goes away. And then you're like, that's 2K. And that's 2K. And that's a problem. But it really starts keeping them down as low as you can, cutting that low end out. And then a lot of your feedback is going to be in that 1 to 2, I'd say 1 to 5K are really points where monitors ring a lot because those are great frequencies that loop. And that's all feedback is. It's a constant loop. And what happens is it's coming through a mic out of that monitor, and then the mic's picking it up and sending it out into the house. And that's where you get those real bad feedback loops. A couple other things with monitors are mic placement and understanding that if you have a monitor right in front of you and then your mic is aiming right at it, you're not going to get much out of it, obviously. The further away from you you can put those monitors, the better they're going to sound for you. It's just a fact, it's a physical fact of life, because what you're doing is you have an open mic that you're sending signal to, that you're needing to hear out of that monitor, so you don't want them too close together. And then good mic technique helps it too. Uh, and I started having my guys kindly tell this to a lot of our corporate clients. Singers know it, you know what I mean? They know they can do this, don't cup the mic. I mean, that's like one of the worst things you can do on them, and feedback galore. But we get corporate people, and like I said, politicians all the time. It's like, this is how you talk and hold a mic. And I should have brought a mic in here. But if the people have the mic, you can't even see me down here by their waist and what's going on, and you can't hear. Sometimes you just got to tell somebody, use proper mic technique, because it's all about signal flow, and that goes for instruments as well. And I'm just using Richard because I can see him and he plays guitar. If you're playing your guitar right up on the mic, right outside your sound hole on the 12th fret there, to dig into that mic if you need a little more out of it. If you're standing back a couple of feet from that mic's not going to do you any good. And if I try to turn that mic up, I'm just going to get a bunch of squeaking and squalling. So those principles, it starts with mic technique, being in the close proximity of the mic where you need to be, and then you use EQ to cut and manage it. And just, don't cup the mic, and keep the mic facing rear towards the monitor. We talked about stage volume, loud stage, bad mix. A lot of artists use in-ear monitors now, which are great, and they help solve a lot of problems. We're seeing a lot of those priced where musicians can afford them. And a lot of those make it a little bit easier sometimes to mix from stage, as long as you're aware of your room. But if your stage is super loud, you're probably inserting problems into it. And again, even if you're not hearing feedback on stage from that loud stage noise is also going out to your mains. So that mix out front is probably not as clean as it should be, because if you've got loud amps and all kinds of crazy loudness going on stage, and your monitor's raging so lead guitar player can hear his solos, keep in mind that that's coming out in your mains too, because those open mics you have on stage are picking up parts of that. We always say to aim amps sideways or use smaller amps. I don't know if you guys have ever been at a concert, and if you're in the front, all you hear is the guitar player, because you can't, no, not picking on guitar players, but like the guitar player has to bring his full stack for a gig of 100 people, and you can't hear anybody talking. Use smaller amps. I think all of us folks have learned that. When I was in my teens and 20s, I thought it was a rule that you had to bring every amp you owned and turn them all on in order to be good, but you don't. And then control the drums. That's really important too. And by control the drums, churches a lot of times will have sound shields. You don't have to have those, but if you have a Neil Peart or a Alex Van Halen style drummer playing in a room of 100 people, you're gonna hear drums. So you got to be understanding of that. You can't turn acoustic drums down. So anything you can do to soften those is always better. Building a mix, the vocals have to sound good. Add your instruments. Minimal effects. I want to talk about real quick minimal effects, because we see reverb overused quite often. My suggestion on reverb is only when needed, because remember, your room's going to have some natural reverb too. And primarily on your vocals. It really helps carve your vocals out in the mix, and on your acoustic instruments. You don't need any reverb on your drums or kick drum. You don't need any reverb on your bass, on your keyboards. Acoustic guitars, maybe a flute, some reverb sounds nice, but reverb shouldn't be a thing unless it's meant to, because it's the style of your music where you're like, oh, that's awesome reverb. It should enhance your sound. And the easiest, most used instrument for reverb is a vocal. So use it sparingly. Use it to enhance your vocals, not to make your vocals sound like this is a reverb effect with some vocals in it, if that makes sense. It should expand and enhance and bring your vocals out more. Common mistakes: too much reverb, loud monitors, no high pass filter, over boosted EQ. Those are probably the most common mistakes I see, and not even in that order. I would say start with your no high pass filter. Go through the channels and just cut it. If it's not a kick drum or a bass, high pass that thing. Start right off the bat. That's going to save you a lot of trouble. Um, and then speakers behind mics could also mean proper mic placement with your mics. And again, that's proper usage for a vocalist, having that mic where it's supposed to be for the guitar, having your drum mics on your drums, having your violinist up by a mic, having whoever's playing flute right there where that mic's going to be. That's key. And making sure those mics are not around those monitors. Over boosted EQ can cause a big problem. And a lot of times that happens. You're like, I can't hear, man. My vocal's too muddy, so I'm going to add high end. Well, try cutting that mud first and adjusting your gain before you just start adding a lot of EQ. Those are some of the biggest mistakes I see. And then also, one thing I would add to that we see more and more of is your gain staging. It's real important to understand getting that gain right. And then make it happen. There you go. I'm happy to answer any questions, dive as deep as you guys want. I really just tried to kind of give a broad overview with some tips, but we've got time and I'm happy to answer any specific questions or any tips and tricks as it relates to you guys.
I'll go first. So if I understand your basic message, it's clean a signal as you can possibly have, get rid of extra frequencies and that kind of thing. Is basically what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Okay. My setup, as I said, is a Lucas Electronics Nano 300, which basically has a woofer or a bass cabinet and two little array speakers and really no effects. It's got something you can sweep left and right, which seems to affect the amount of treble. I bought and I've been using this is Sans amp thing. It's a DI box with various things I can adjust on it. And I've been using that more and more. I play a lot solo and not necessarily with a monitor. And it is a nylon string guitar with Fishman Electronics and no cover on the sound hole. And I can toggle back and forth between the bridge, I guess it's a piezo pickup, and the mic that's in the thing. And oftentimes, if I have feedback, I will push the thing all the way over and just use the bridge pickup. I don't particularly like the sound that way, but depending on the situation. And a lot of this is for gig work, not necessarily concert work. So I guess my questions are this. If I understand you correctly, first of all, what would be the high pass filter on my setup with the guitar, with the acoustic, with the fly rig, which I guess is essentially a DI. Sounds like high pass filter is the first thing to look at if I'm getting bad sound
100.
feedback. All right.
So I'm looking at your system now, and I'm looking at the little console. I'm seeing the EQs. What I would do, and I don't know the Sans amp model you had, but we use a Radial J48 or Pro 48 DI, and they have that button on there with a 100 hertz high pass filter, and best investment you ever make, and you can just hit it right there. The Sans amp may have it. I'm not familiar with the model you said, but most DIs, especially for acoustic instruments, have that high pass filter, and it's just a little button, and it looks like. Let me pull one up, and I'll share my screen again. But that would be money well spent on a DI. And okay, so let's see, let's share my screen again. Share screen right here. Okay, see it. Tell me if you can see this right here. See this right here?
I do see it. Yep.
See that high pass filter.
Uh,
That's going to be on, and that one's set at 80 hertz. Some of them are 80, some of them are 100. But on every instrument, unless I'm using this on a bass, upright bass guitar,
uh-huh.
pushing that button, and then I'm cutting some more out of it. So you would start with that high
Uh-huh.
pass filter, and then you could accentuate that with either your SansAmp. I bet you have a low. Do you have a low EQ knob on there?
Oh, yeah. There's high, mid shift, and low.
So the mid shift, does it give you a frequency range?
It says 250 to 1K.
Okay, so what that is, that's kind of like your parametric, and you can turn it up or down. That's where you would notch out some of that low end if you need it, or high end.
Okay.
The low, what I would do is I would do that high pass filter, and I would start by turning your low down to where it's like at 10 o'clock, just a little bit over.
Yeah.
And then if you're still getting it, maybe experiment. See, I don't know what the frequency is on that low, but it should be in your manual. Depending on where it is, it may be 100. I don't know, but you can turn that down, and that's going to help get that mud out right away.
Okay. So, okay.
And then on your SansAmp, that mid sweep, that's what I was talking about, where it's like sweep the sound. So do you have a button on that? You have a button that goes that EQ from 250 to 1K, whatever you said, and then you should have an up or a down button, right?
Actually, it's a knob. I can turn it.
The knob. So turn that button like down, I guess, and
Okay.
then run signal and do that sweep, and it'll sound like a wah wah pedal. You hear it go whoa, whoa, and you can find that frequency that's giving you a problem.
Using the mid shift.
Yes,
Okay. All
but
right.
start with that high pass filter, and any DI has this. It doesn't have to be a radial G40, J48. On for your acoustic instrument, I highly suggest you get an active DI for that phantom
Okay.
sound. It's going to sound better.
Is that what J48 is?
hmm
Okay.
It's an active phantom power. You could that's a two channel. You don't need that. You could also do a Pro 48 radio. Let's see. This is a good one too. I think this one has a high pass. Let's see. It has a pad, and what the pad is, that turns your that one may not have a high pass. No, that has a lift and a pad. So you need one with a high pass. So
Okay.
you may need the J48.
Okay.
And just while we're talking on the pad situation,
Mm-hmm.
the pad just gives you a 15 dB drop. Reasons you would use that is if your signal was too strong, which it's not going to be on an acoustic guitar.
Right.
But if you're using that, I'm trying to think of when you would need that. Sometimes a fiddle come in really hot, or a mandolin will come in really hot, and that goes to your gain. Okay,
Okay.
you may have your gain all the way down. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, and the signal's really loud. It's too loud. That's what that pad does. It drops it down 15 dB.
Okay. So there is no high pass filter on because anything that obviously looks like a high pass filter on the fly rig. Certainly not on my Nano either. So I would need to.
I think one of the best things, and yes, get one with a high pass filter, and it can also say low cut. That's the same thing.
Uh-huh.
This would be a great investment for you playing acoustic guitar, because one thing we didn't talk about also, and I'll just mention, reversing your polarity can sometimes solve a lot of problems with an acoustic guitar. I've had a problem with like an A string, then I
Right.
reverse polarity and it's gone. That just gives you a lot of instant tools to really solve a lot of problems.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got that. I know I've got that. So, okay. All right. Yeah. That's how I would clean the signal up with a high pass filter with this mid shift, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
And to be clear, when I use the mid shift, I just have to play with it till I find that the feedback goes away. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. All right. Um, Gain and fader, real quickly. I don't want to take everybody's time. With the system I've got, and what you got up there is not what I have.
Okay.
That's got considerably more controls than what I've got. Mine is and I don't know if they make it anymore. It's a Nano 300. I think they make 600 now, and that's maybe what you're looking at. Yeah, there's the
Is
608.
that what you have?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I have. So there's
So you
really
don't have any EQ in
no,
this.
no, not at all.
What is it? Is this your gain and this is your volume?
That's the only thing that seems to control volume, the one that you were touching right now. The
What's
other
this?
one that seems to affect the brightness or of the sound. I don't believe that does anything with volume. I think it's a bit
Weird.
like a tone control, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's got preset gains and everything built into it. Gotcha.
Okay.
I would be careful with how much sub I put through there.
Okay.
Uh, if you're performing solo, you probably don't need much. And
Uh,
I would figure out what these mean. Now, do you run a mixer through this, Richard, or do you
I
just
I
straight into it?
I put the fly rig uh, before the amp, and between the guitar, the fly rig, and then it goes into the amp, and that's what I've done because I like having reverb on occasion, having some of the effects on the fly rig. So that's how I've been running it.
Yeah, I would just be careful. Uh, Mixers, contour knob, and the so okay, the only tonal control you have is the contour knob. Yeah,
Yeah,
so all of your sculpting, all of your tone is going to have to come from your pedal. And then it looks like your vocal, you're just kind of going in and you don't really have a lot of adjustments on it,
I
unfortunately.
I do have a small PV mixer, a PV6, which I can use for vocals, and I
Okay.
sometimes run that between the mic and the amp when I'm.
That's what I would do whenever you can, because that's going to allow you to I love those little mixers. They're bulletproof, man. I used to have one.
Oh,
I had two of them.
this thing is older than dirt.
Yeah, but it'll work. So
Yeah, it
see, if
does.
you got a low, you can turn your low down. You can cut your mids. You can boost your highs a little bit. You've got separate gain and everything, and then you just send that out to your mixer. That's going to give you the ability to really sculpt more of your sound
You talk
than just
about
going straight in.
vocal or guitar?
I mean, if it were me and I had that set up, I would
Yeah.
run everything to a mixer and then go into the two channels on the speaker and just turn it up. That because
Okay.
here you've got more tools. You see what I mean? You can
Uh,
you can solve more problems right here with your EQ, whereas you don't have any of that on here.
right.
I would just go into this left and right and just kind of flatten that out. So that operates just as a speaker.
Okay. And then so what's the difference between using the PV and using the sounds amp?
So the Sans amp, is that a pedal or is it a
I think you can use it as a pedal. It's got, I mean, it's Tech 21 makes it. You probably found it already. Yeah.
that it right there? No.
No, that's not it. Can you see this? I'm holding it up.
Yes. What's it called? Sans
It's
amp.
called Sounds Amp Fly Rig, acoustic fly rig.
So that is going to be specific to your guitar, number one.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
you don't put vocal in
No,
it.
I don't.
That's just your guitar.
Right.
So, and you've got all kinds of stuff on there. Yeah, you've got that mid shift you can control. You can roll off. Hey, there's a notch you can do too. On
Right.
that notch, okay, that 100 to 200 in that boot, you can notch that out. That's
Okay.
you're gonna notch out. So you can sculpt your guitar sound on there, send it to
Uh-huh.
your mixer, have your vocals send it to your mixer, send that to your speaker.
Oh, really? Okay.
That way your mixer is controlling all that. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
All right. Okay. Well, I don't want to take any more of anybody's time, but I'd love to sit down and talk with you or get a chance to play with this with
Yeah.
somebody who knows what they're doing. So, okay.
Having that mixer is really your control center, and that way you can address any of those problems because on that mixer you have
Yeah.
you have your EQ and everything, and you have your gain, and you can fix a lot of problems before it goes to the speaker.
Okay. So where's the gain? Where's okay, so I've got gain and volume on the mixer.
Gain here, gain here, gain here. Yep.
Okay, it does say gain. All right.
And
And
that
but
has
that's
a low cut too. If you're, if you're just playing by yourself, there's your low cut on the whole mix right there. Boom. Do it.
in the channels 3, 4, and 5 and 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only see gain on a couple. Okay.
Well, the gain's at the top on 1 and 2, and then
Oh, okay. All
down
right.
here, it's right here. Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else have any other questions? And you can email me anything you have, Richard.
Okay. I might just do that. Thank you.
It's really just about not overdoing, and especially and reductive EQing, cleaning things up, using proper mic technique. Those simple things I found in especially when I first started touring professionally, it's like, oh man, I gotta have this piece of gear. Piece of gear takes care of it all. Or, we go in and do installations in churches, and they would say, hey man, isn't there a box you can buy that's just gonna make us sound better and take away all the feedback? No, not really. But if you have those simple fundamentals, make sure your mics aren't in front of speakers. Make sure you're doing your high pass filter. Make sure you're reductive EQing. You're going to have a lot less problems. And then bringing your stage volume down too. That's a big thing. In the short time we have, those are really the biggest things I can share that will help things out. And if you get feedback and get a problem, a lot of times when we're testing systems, we want it to feedback. We will force it to feedback before we do the sound check because then we are identifying our problem frequencies in that room and I can notch them out ahead of time. So sometimes it's okay before your sound check or right at the start of your sound check, turn things up until it feeds back. And then you're going to hear, and you're like, okay, 300 to 400. I'm going to cut some of that because that's a frequency in this room that's giving me troubles. And that's a good idea to do that if you feel confident doing that in your mixes and play around with it. Especially if you're running your own sound and touring when you're rehearsing or practicing at home. I mean, turn those knobs on the buttons. We all like to have it just set so it sounds great. But don't be afraid to make it sound bad and get that feedback so that you can understand where those problem frequencies are, because then when you're performing in the heat of the moment, you'll be aware of them.
So I was just going to ask, I'm assuming a lot of this stuff, maybe all of it applies to like home studio recording, especially if you're doing like high gain amps and things like that.
Sorry, I heard you say high gain amps, but I didn't hear the question, Dave. Sorry. Could you repeat?
I was talking about a lot of these principles um, working for home recording, especially if you're doing high gain amps, and in order to get those tubes to push, you're gonna have to crank it up, but you also don't want to, just ruin the the signal.
Absolutely. And that's a good question. Good point. The difference is with home studios is you don't have that live speaker element where you're fighting the feedback, and it gives you a lot more room for error and a lot more room to utilize your sonic spectrum because you're putting that on tape, hard drive, uh, or whatever. You're not performing that live where it could cause some feedback. So in a home studio environment, yeah, that gain is your best friend because you want that gain to signal ratio to be on point so that you can have that clean signal on your recording instead of it being in your live speaker. And the great thing about it being on your recording is you can make it sound exactly like you want, as loud as you want. Whereas if you're doing it live, you're fighting the beast of the live application to make it sound exactly as you want, as loud as you can get it. So in a home studio, those same principles really work to get you a good recording. Absolutely. I love the thumbs up. I've never used that. I don't even know how to use that. That makes me feel special. I feel validated. I'm going to call my wife and show her this is what works.
Let me ask, I have one other question for you.
Okay.
I mean, oftentimes I'm working, like I say, with just this rig to amplify. I assume I shouldn't be sitting right in front of it with my acoustic guitar, right?
Working, sitting right. So
Yeah, so it's not behind me like when I was a kid playing bass in a rock and roll band. You stand in front of the amp and play. I mean,
right.
with this, I usually try to set it off to the side. I don't want it too much in front of me because I want to hear what I'm doing as well and hear the
Sure.
mix with the other players.
So a couple things on there. I'm not familiar with this specific rig, but
Right.
I mentioned the Bose rigs we use, and I would read the manual because I know some of these they are built to go behind you so that you can hear them. Is this one made to do that?
It does not work well behind me. No,
Okay.
I can tell you.
Then then when you're rehearsing, yes, you would want to hear it, but also like when you're performing a show, where do you set that so that you can hear it and the house can hear it too?
If I'm doing, say, I'm playing chamber music with this thing or something, it's set well behind me, so it sounds like, or it's off to one side. You know.
So I would, it's always great to be right in front of it when you're rehearsing and doing stuff, but then I'm a big proponent of setting things up the way they're going to be when you're performing. So,
Right.
because, like if, for example, I always stood on the stage left side of the stage and Molly on the stage right. And I got used to really hearing our Bose tower through my right ear. Well, a couple of shows we had to change that, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going
Yeah.
on, man? This left ear is not ready for this." And however you're comfortable with your stage setup is how I would suggest you practice during that rehearsal.
Yeah, and it's got two detachable pods about this big, or arrays. All right, you can separate them and put them. And there are poles that come with it. One pole can go into the bass cabinet itself, and you can put it up high, and then you can set another pole off to one side high, so you could split the treble. I usually, if I'm going to play at any kind of volume, I try and put the speakers up high like that, and I assume that's going to cut down on feedback too, because yeah, okay, because it's
I see what you're talking about now. I had a friend of mine who had one of these, and he would put like one on one side because
yeah,
bass is more omnidirectional, and then the other two up wide, and you could hear them from the sides.
right, exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
and if you can get those up high and far apart, it's all, you still want to hear them. Don't put them a mile
right,
away, but that's going to help you with feedback and clarity as well.
and it helps through. I mean, it's not, it doesn't throw the sound like a powered speaker, because I've also got a custom powered speaker that I use for bigger gigs. Um, but it does, yeah, those things don't throw the sound like a power thing, but if you separate them, it works nicely for filling a room.
Yeah, I would do that. I would put them back, put them over to the side because you're still going to hear out of them.
Yeah.
Have that little mixer right there with you. That way, also another reason to use the mixer, set your bass at like straight up zero. Your
Okay.
not your sub. I would bring that sub out a little maybe, but whatever settings on there are just standard zero unity is what I
Uh,
would do. I would just set it at its basic, straightforward, no color added, no EQ added,
yeah.
like straight zero setting. Then put your mixer through there, put your guitar into your mixer, put your vocal into your mixer, and then any adjustments you need to make are on that little mixer right there next to
Okay. That makes good sense.
you. Use
Okay.
that as a speaker.
Yeah. 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 No, that makes good sense. All right.
When are we going to hear the concert?
I got the guitar right here, man.
Well, I know we're dropping people. I hope I'm not running them off, Tamara. But if anybody has any questions, they can follow up. And if you like, I'll send you this deck, and then I have the old-fashioned outline I made with a lot more info.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Heath. Thanks for being here to share all your knowledge and information with us. That was awesome. And I don't understand a word you said, but it sounded very impressive.
I don't either. We just make it up. I hope it helped. And if anybody has any more questions or people that view it, I'll send you this info. But truly, I'm happy to have discussions that help anyone. Every artist, it's a unique and specific setup from their instrumentation and their art down to the electronics they use. So if I can help anybody along that journey, I'm happy to. Just you know how to get a hold of me.
Great. So, Marcus had to leave. That's the only reason he's not here at this point. Um, I was going to also say if you're in the Performing Artists Directory, Heath is one of our KPAN advisors, and you could always apply for a KPAN to work with Heath for up to 6 hours. And he could help you with this kind of thing. We're our KPAN program is closed for the rest of this year, but it'll be open again after the first of next year, which is actually in July. So we'll have a grant application, I guess, open in Mark, when will you open that, do you think? Okay, Mark's not going to tell you, but it'll open in the spring, my guess is. So check back.
Can I ask one question before we go?
Yes.
When and where do I get to see Red Shade Blue again? That was the name, right? That was it.
That was Mark's band.
That was epic.
Okay, Mark says April or May. I think that's for Richard. I don't think that's for you, Heath. I think
Oh,
I think Red Shade Blue is not playing in March or April, but I could be wrong.
I'll never forget the night Red Shade Blue rocked the Cream Coffee House in Owensboro, Kentucky. People still talk about that.
Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us. This will, in the next couple of days, go up on our YouTube channel so you can watch it again or share it out with other people. As soon as Heath gets me information, I will also send that out to you. And like Heath said, if you have questions, you can always email him.
Yep.
We have more Creative Industry Summit series coming up in January. Check back on our website. We'll have a listing. We're also doing e-blast that'll give you more information and how to register. So keep an eye on those. Hopefully there'll be more things you want to attend. And if you have ideas or needs, let me know, and we can work on getting together the things that you're interested in, especially. Chris?
Sorry. I just want to say Mark responded April or May. He said his mic wasn't working, but that's a great memory. And I really enjoyed your presentation. It was amazing.
Well, thank you. Y'all make me feel so good.
Yeah, thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, it was great.
I appreciate you guys asking me to work with you. I always feel special and cool when I get to hang out with the Arts Council.
Okay, well, I guess we're ready to close it out then.
Thanks again.
Cynthia, you can stop the recording now.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Yep.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again.